Once when I was 11, I was alone in my grandparents' house. I think it was around 7 or 8 p.m. when it happened. Quick explanation, my grandparents' house is a 2-story one, with their room being right above the living room. The second floor is made of wood, which makes a very distinct noise whenever anyone is waking on it, and the stairs plopping you right into the living room next to the couch that is in front of the TV. Also, where they live is very noisy and there's buses going up the street every hour. Keep these details, they're important. So I was watching TV when I heard what sounded like a light thud on the second floor, but since there was nothing else, I thought it was either my imagination or the noise came from one of the neighbors. A few minutes later, I heard it again, much louder now, like there was actually someone walking up there. I knew it couldn't be a burglar because the only window on the second floor that anyone could use to enter the house had bars and it was already closed and locked. The sound kept going as if the person was walking on circles, so I went upstairs to check, using a cushion as a shield just in case. I was 11, shut up. Turned on the lights, checked the room, nothing. I checked the whole second floor just to be safe, but found nothing odd or out of place, so I went back downstairs to the TV. Around 1 or 2 hours later, it came back again, this time so loud it was real. It felt like it was in my ears and upstairs at the same time. No matter the noises from the street or the TV, I could hear perfectly, and now I was truly scared. The steps also got out of the bedroom. I heard them perfectly getting out of the bedroom. No noise from the door though. Pause at the corridor and come down the stairs. I sat there frozen in fear, hugging the cushion while the steps came down. When the person came to the part of the stairs where the wall ended and you could actually see who was coming, the steps stopped. I rushed to turn the stairs light up and thank God, I saw nothing, but after a while, I swear I heard the steps going back upstairs. Of course, when the adults got back home and I told my mom, she said it was just my imagination, but it was not. Also no, I wasn't watching a horror movie or anything. I was the very definition of a crybaby and a scared cat as a kid. Anything horror was a big ass nope in my book. Oddly enough, I liked watching the grim adventures of Billy and Mandy. I was zapping between Disney Channel and Discovery Kids. Also, to finish the story, about 2 years after that, I went to my bedroom to grab something and saw a tall man shadow-like figure with 2 white dots for eyes, and a silhouette that looked like an overcoat. I haven't seen, heard and experienced anything like those moments in that house ever since. I used to work on the youth staff at my old church. Now this church was built like 70 years ago. Lots of weird stuff happened at that church, like footsteps being heard on higher floors, lights being seen moving along the ceiling. But the weirdest experience I ever had was when I showed up early for Wednesday night service by about an hour. I was in town and didn't feel like driving home, only to leave a few minutes later. The youth room was behind a gymnasium, in an old school building attached to the church. I pull up to the church and there are like 3 cars there and the gymnasium is locked. So I go through the church, say hi to the pastor, and start walking down a long hallway that leads to the gymnasium. As I'm walking, I hear a basketball game going. Not surprising, the church would often rent the gym out for extra cash. But when I open the door, the sound of a basketball game, crowd cheering, people running etc., immediately stops. There is not a person in the gym. I quickly make my way across the court and up the stairs, praying the doors are unlocked, and thankfully they are. The janitor is there cleaning and go up to him and say, "The weirdest thing just happened," and he looks at me and just says, "You heard the basketball game too?" We just look at each other, not really much to say at that point. Several other people show up, all saying they heard the basketball game. After maybe 20 minutes, no one else says they heard anything. To this day, that is my top ghost story. I work at a no-kill animal shelter. But in the 50s through the early 90s, that same building was a county pound where 5 to 7 animals were euthanized daily, so there is a history there. On weekends, one person works the kennel alone on Sundays and Mondays. The layout of our particular kennels is kind of a circle of about 20 kennels, and 2 doors leading to outside run yards. While we are cleaning kennels, 2 dogs at a time are outside in the runs. This was about 2 years ago, me alone on a Sunday, and at that time we only had one solid black dog in kennel available for adoption named Lucy, and she was a large shepherd that was somewhat not always friendly with other dogs. I was cleaning a different dog's kennel when I very clearly saw a solid large black dog's butt and back legs, with a long shaggy tail and all cut around to the corner. My first thought is, oh damn, Lucy's gotten out of her kennel. And I didn't know if she was headed for another dog's kennel to try and fight through another dog's kennel door, because as she cut that corner and I lost sight of her, I heard the dogs in their kennels on the other side barking. I quickly put down my mop and kind of sprinted down the kennel hall around the corner to go leash Lucy, and in doing so I passed her kennel and she was in the kennel. I kind of slammed on brakes and just stared at Lucy as the barking on the other side kind of stopped. And I thought, well, if that wasn't Lucy, I don't have any other large black dogs. I went around the whole kennel 3 times, and there was no loose dogs, certainly none that met that description. And I know that I very surely saw a black dog running around that kennel floor, and over the years, I was not the only one to see him, or her. I went to see a movie with my boyfriend at this old theater in Wellington, New Zealand. It was a nature documentary, not scary, not traumatic in any way. Afterwards, I went to the washroom, which was fairly small and only had about 3 stalls. I sit on the toilet in the first stall and I can hear another woman in the third stall, just going pee. Suddenly, I feel air blowing on my head, like a vent got turned on, and I looked up to see where the wind was coming from. Just as I realized there was no vent and it was strange that there was air blowing on my head, it was like there was suddenly air spinning in front of me, almost like a mini tornado. There was the strongest scent of perfume and it felt like something was trying to materialize right in front of me in the stall. The strangest thing was that I was also completely and utterly overcome with emotion, so much so, that I was sobbing and could barely breathe. I had literally gone from sitting on the toilet being totally calm and even doing, and 10 seconds later, I was literally hysterical. The spinning felt like it was about to materialize something, and then it just suddenly stopped like nothing had happened. I could hear the lady in the stall and could tell that she didn't hear anything. I, however, couldn't stop sobbing and trying to catch my breath. There was nothing that I was upset about. I don't have panic attacks and I'm a really calm, level-headed person. It took me 20 minutes to calm down and come out of the bathroom. My boyfriend thought something had happened to me. I can't explain it, I have never experienced anything like that ever again in my life, it was so weird. Stayed in an Airbnb in Prenzlauer Berg, Berlin. I couldn't decide if the place was decorated to imitate 1970s East German style or whether it just hadn't been decorated in 40 years, I suspected the latter. On the first night, me and my friends all heard footsteps in the night walking across the apartment. Then the following night we were having drinks in the kitchen and a lamp was knocked off its table by some invisible force. Shortly afterwards, we heard 3 distinct loud knocks at the apartment door, an internal door, inaccessible without a key. Being the only male, I rushed to answer it, thinking it could be the landlord or something, but there was nobody there. When we checked the Booking.com reviews, several other guests had also reported similar spooky goings-on. Way too many to have time to detail right now. Ghosts always find me, or I'm sensitive to them or something. I'll share a couple short stories. First story, I was putting our son to bed a couple of years ago. My wife was on the couch watching TV, I was standing at his bedroom door. It's just the 3 of us, no pets or anything like that. The bedroom door I was standing next to saying good night is in clear view from the couch. Next to the TV, we have a wax warmer lamp, it turns on and off by touch. The moment I said good night to my son, my wife and I saw that lamp turn on without any touching it. It hasn't done that before or since, but we've had plenty of other experiences in this house before and since. Second story, about 15 years ago, maybe a few more, this girl I was dating, her friend, and a friend of mine went to an abandoned house. Her friend had been there many times and taken lots of photos with white foggy apparitions in them. It was a warm, sunny day with clear skies and no wind. We went in the middle of the afternoon too. We first walked around outside. I tried taking pictures, but nothing ever turned up. Best I caught was, well, my friend stepped into the garage which was under the house. I took a photo and in the flash, there was a second shadow of a person next to him. Then we went inside. I immediately felt some grab my right arm and hang onto it the whole time in the house. My arm happened to also be bent. Picture how a man and woman hook their arms together while escorting each other, or a child holding me like I'm protecting it. I'm not sure what was going on other than feeling it. We made our way back to the living room area where we entered. The front door was lying on the ground. Most of the house was falling apart. I started taking more pictures. As I did, the temperature got noticeably warmer. Then the front door lying on the floor started shaking. Keep in mind how thick and heavy the front door of houses usually are. There's weight to them, they're very solid doors. We ran out of there after the door shook. Except whatever was holding my arm came with us. It felt like someone was sitting in my lap in the car for nearly 10 minutes driving away. It did eventually leave my lap while driving, but it was cold and had weight to it. I want to go on the record that I have never had an experience like this since then. I am a firm believer in the paranormal, but even this makes me shiver when I recall it. Me and my family around 5 years ago lived in an old house from the 1700s. It had been in my family's name for quite a bit, but never really had any history around it. We'd been living there for a solid 3 to 4 years at the time of this happening. The house had grown unsettling in a way to the point that the places I felt most uneasy around, the crawl space in the basement and the attic, I'd catch my cats hissing at or downright refusing to go near. The basement crawl space was directly 2 floors under my bedroom, and the attic was right outside it. I woke up around maybe 4 in the morning feeling sick in the stomach. That same on-edge feeling hit me, but I paid no mind to it as I scrolled on my phone for a bit. I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, and I understood why when I looked up. In my second-story window, which had a drop-off to the basement steps right outside it, so a solid 3 stories reach from the actual physical ground, there was just someone or something staring at me. Looked straight out of a page of scary stories to tell in the dark. I flipped over in my bed and began begging like there was no tomorrow. It felt like only 5 minutes, but by the time I turned back over, the sun was rising. I don't know what the hell happened that night. When I was 17 to 18 and still living at my parents' house, I woke up one morning. Got dressed, did a few things in my room, then headed for the bathroom. When I walked in the bathroom, I had walked in on a lady. I was really embarrassed and apologized profusely. I then went downstairs to the kitchen to wait. Some time went by and I asked my mom if she would hurry her friend out of the bathroom because I really had to pee. My parents looked at each other and my dad ran up the stairs. They had no idea another person was in the house. When my dad opened the bathroom door, no one was there. My family believed what I saw, particularly because I didn't think it was anything paranormal to begin with. Fast forward a few years, my grandmother hung a photograph on her wall. It looked just like the woman from the bathroom. I asked my grandmother who it was, and she went on to say it was her grandmother and the original owner of the property my parents built their home on. To this day, I can't come up with any explanation. Pretty wild to think she's still hanging around after all this time. About 12 years ago, I was in New Orleans at a friend's apartment. It was about 8 p.m. and I was outside on the balcony overlooking the French Quarters. I was about to have a drink, hadn't started drinking yet, when I heard some muffled voices from inside the apartment behind me. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I figured my friend had a guest over and I didn't want to be rude, so I turned around to walk inside to introduce myself. This is where my life changed. As I turn around to look into the apartment through the glass door, I see a young woman standing there, maybe 12 to 13. Not unexpected, because I had heard someone talking just moments ago, but I found her to be out of place. First, she was standing there by herself with no one else in the room. Second, she was dressed in a white gown as if she were getting ready to go to bed in the 19th century. Additionally, I couldn't see her face because she was covering it with her hair. I was looking at her in profile with the left side of her body facing me about 15 to 20 feet away from me. Kind of reminded me of that girl from the movie The Ring, to be honest. As I'm looking at her trying to process what I'm looking at, she disappears in plain sight. I never looked away and she just vanished. It's almost like when you're looking at a photo with a hidden image in it and your brain finally sees the image, except it was the reverse of that. The best way I could describe it is like seeing that hidden image and then it just vanishes. So, I go talk to my friend because I have no idea what the hell's going on, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions or start out by pushing the conversation into the paranormal right out of the gate. Who knows, maybe I saw something rational that she could explain, which would be easier if I don't start out the conversation asking about ghosts. I asked her, "Did you just have a guest come over like a minute or two ago?" She said no and asked why. I said, well, I saw something, but I'm not sure, and she cuts me off. She says, you saw the little girl, didn't you? I said, what? She said, I haven't seen her, but a couple of my friends say they've seen a girl in white walking around the apartment. I spent a little over a week there without any other experiences in that apartment. I stayed at the Carriage House in Bed and Breakfast in Lynchburg, Virginia, permanently closed. My girlfriend booked the stay. We did very little research beforehand. It was an impulse Groupon deal. The night before our arrival, I did a Google search, just to get an idea of where we were staying. One of the links that popped up was for a paranormal group that had performed an investigation. They had some creepy EVPs posted on the site. I was definitely intrigued. When we arrived, the owner gave us a tour, but getting any ghost stories out of him was like pulling teeth. He did reluctantly tell us that people have seen an apparition of a little girl. Also, guests heard knocking on their doors when they checked no one was there. He and his wife live in another house on the property. He didn't have much personal experience with anything paranormal, aside from an incident trying to hang a picture on the wall and it kept falling down. He said he had no explanation since the picture would have to lift up off the hook in order to fall. It happened several times, often immediately after he hung it up and left the room. Fast forward to our first night, we were alone in the house. There were no other guests this weekend. My girlfriend has fallen asleep. I'm quietly playing the hit new game Angry Birds on my iPad when all of a sudden, I hear a female voice with a deeper tone humming, and it's coming from the ensuite bathroom. It sounded upbeat like someone humming as if they were cleaning the bathroom, but it also sounded distant like I was hearing it through a tunnel or tube. I jumped up out of bed, ran over to the bathroom, and it was empty. I went back to bed. After a few minutes laying there processing, I heard it again for a few seconds. Then nothing the rest of the night. I barely slept. The next morning, I told the owners at breakfast. They said that was definitely the first time anyone has reported hearing humming. For the rest of the stay, my girl and I had to take sleeping pills just to be able to sleep. The event happened back in late November last year. Me, my younger brother, and my stepsister were sitting at the table goofing off. We had candles and were pretending to be a mediation coach. It was all fun and games when all of a sudden, my little brother, who hardly is ever scared and never, and I mean never cries, fell backwards from his chair, screamed, and ran to other side of the room. Me and my stepsister didn't question, we just ran with him. At first, he was crying and was shaking. When he calmed down, he looked at us and said, "Did you see it?" Me and my stepsister looked at each other with a confused look and turned to him and said, "No." Then my stepsister said, "What happened?" He got more scared and looked down and covered his face. He has never done this before. He looks up at us and says, "I saw a tall, skinny black figure walking to the closet." We went silent. After a few minutes of silence, I said, "Did it look like it was as tall as the door?" My little brother nodded his head, while my stepsister asked why I asked that question. I then stated, "I've it seen once while I was in the mirror and have just pictured it in my head whenever I'm in the room." The room is my mom's room, where my little brother saw the figure. That happened when I first moved back in with my mom after living with my grandma, in January. Then my stepsister also said how she always felt something watching her from inside of my mom's room. We did some of our own investigating and we think the figure came from my mom's closet and is stuck to only my mom's room. We think this because my little brother saw the figure walking to the closet. My stepsister always gets a nervous feeling when in my mom's room, and I saw it in my mom's bathroom mirror and have seen some type of glowing orangish eyes from inside the closet. How we think it got there: my mom's ex used to travel a lot and make friends along the way, and said friends would give him gifts, so we think that the figure is attached to one of those objects. Plus, while the ex was here, he said that he's seen a tall black figure since he was little. So that was a scary experience, but we named the figure Danny DeVito to ease our fears for a while. We told my mom, and as any adult, she blamed it on the shows we were watching, and that it was all in her heads. Now once in a while she'll ask, "So anything happened with Danny DeVito?" We just say no and continue on with our lives. Went to a rental house literally facing the beach. To give you guys a quick description, it was a house made in the 1960s. And after many remodeling and saves, it was used as a holiday resort or rental. There were 3 stories. First floor has the kitchen, living room, common area with an outdoor barbecue pit. Second and third floor are basically bedrooms with their own toilets. There was an attic, but it was sealed shut because it served as a storage. I was with maybe 7 other friends. We were having a blast and was there for 3 days 2 nights. First night was just seeing apparitions and hearing random sounds. There were some ladies as well, and they would claim that their toilet mirror would show their reflection and a ghostly lady behind them, but when they turned around there was nothing there. Second night, things flew off the kitchen. Things would suddenly catch fire. We all agreed to pack our things early and keep lights on. Them lights would be off and on randomly. The last day, we were at the beach having a blast, friends playing beach volleyball, etc. We had our stuff already packed and in the van waiting to leave at noon. I wanted to check the place one last time. I looked at the attic window. I stared at the window, and there was a lady looking at me from the cracks of the curtains. She was smiling. My body immediately broke into a cold sweat. I did not enter the house. I took a picture thinking nothing of it. Talked with my friends in the van and asked them about the window. They froze. Friends said there was no attic window. They laughed at first but realized I was not joking after a while. To my shock, they shared their stories as well. I froze. I checked the picture. They looked, there she was, and the window. My other friend took his phone out and checked. The first and second day pictures, no windows. Found out years later, a little girl was murdered there after the rapist kidnapped her, mutilated her corpse and committed countless other nefarious things like necrophilia and cannibalism. He was caught many years later.